Let me ask you something personal. Do you ever feel a tingling in your feet when you wake up in the morning? A kind of numbness that takes a few minutes to go away? Maybe your legs feel heavy by the afternoon. Maybe you've noticed that your energy dropped. Not suddenly, but slowly over months and years, until one day you realized you just don't feel like yourself anymore. If any of that sounds familiar, I need you to stay with me for the next 20 minutes. Because what I'm about to share with you is not something your doctor is going to bring up during a routine visit. It's not on the prescription pad, and it's definitely not being advertised during commercial breaks, but it was being used, quietly, consistently, passed down from generation to generation, long before the pharmaceutical industry existed. Here's what nobody explains to you when your blood sugar starts climbing. When glucose levels stay elevated in your bloodstream, even slightly above normal, that sugar doesn't just float around harmlessly. It reacts with the proteins in your artery walls. It stiffens them. It roughens them. Imagine the inner lining of your blood vessels, which is supposed to be as smooth as the inside of a new garden hose, slowly becoming more like sandpaper. Sugar, when it's chronically elevated, acts like crushed glass moving through your circulatory system. It scratches the arterial walls with every single heartbeat. And those micro-scratches, they become the foundation for calcium deposits, for plaque, for blockages. And where does this show up first? Not in the heart, not in the brain, not where most people are watching. It shows up in the legs, in the feet, in the small arteries that supply circulation to the lower extremities, and in men especially in the pelvic region, where blood flow is directly connected to vitality, hormonal energy, and sexual function. After the age of 40, this process accelerates. The arteries lose elasticity, the blood moves slower, the extremities feel it first. That tingling, that heaviness, that coldness in the feet, even on a warm night. Doctors have a name for it: peripheral arterial disease. But long before that name existed, long before there were clinics and blood work panels and statin prescriptions, elderly people in villages across Europe, the Middle East and Asia were dealing with exactly this problem. And they had a solution: 5 ingredients, prepared in a specific way, taken every morning on an empty stomach. And today I'm going to show you exactly what it is, why it works, and what happens inside your body when you start using it consistently. Let's talk about what goes into this remedy, because each ingredient was chosen for a reason. This isn't folklore for the sake of tradition. Every single one of these 5 components has been studied by modern science, and the results are remarkable. The 5 ingredients are 4 cloves of raw garlic, 2 tablespoons of raw apple cider vinegar, the juice of 1 full lemon, 1 tablespoon of raw honey, a pinch of pink Himalayan salt. That's it. 5 things. No laboratory required, no prescription, no insurance approval. Now let me walk you through the preparation and, more importantly, the reasoning behind each component. Garlic, the ancient vasodilator. You take 4 cloves of garlic, not the powder, not the capsules, not the oil. Fresh, raw garlic cloves. You crush them, not chop, crush. This distinction matters enormously. When you crush a garlic clove, you rupture the cells and trigger an enzymatic reaction. The compound alliin comes into contact with the enzyme alliinase, and within seconds, they produce a third compound called allicin. Allicin is the reason garlic smells strong. It's also the reason garlic heals. Allicin is one of the most powerful natural vasodilators ever studied. A vasodilator is a substance that relaxes and widens the blood vessels, allowing more blood to move through them with less pressure and less resistance. When your arteries are stiff and narrowed, which is exactly what happens with chronically elevated blood sugar, vasodilation is exactly what the body needs. A study published in the Journal of Nutrition found that aged garlic extract significantly reduced arterial stiffness in patients with coronary artery disease. Another study showed that garlic supplementation reduced systolic blood pressure in hypertensive patients by an average of 8 to 9 millimeters of mercury, which is clinically meaningful. That's not a small number. But perhaps most relevant for what we're discussing today, garlic has been shown to reduce the tendency of blood platelets to clump together, which is called platelet aggregation. When blood sugar is high, platelets become stickier. They cluster. They contribute to the formation of tiny clots that slow circulation even further. Garlic's allicin actively counters this process. You crush the 4 cloves. You let them sit for 10 minutes after crushing. This waiting period is important. It allows the allicin to fully form. Then you proceed with the rest of the ingredients. Apple cider vinegar, the calcium cleaner. 2 tablespoons of raw apple cider vinegar, unfiltered. You'll see the cloudy sediment at the bottom of the bottle. That's called the mother, and it contains beneficial enzymes and bacteria that you want. Now here's where the science gets genuinely fascinating. One of the mechanisms by which chronically elevated blood sugar damages arteries is through a process called vascular calcification. The roughened, inflamed arterial walls become sites where calcium crystals begin to deposit. Over time, these calcium deposits harden the artery walls, reducing their flexibility and narrowing the passage through which blood can flow. Apple cider vinegar is acetic acid, and acetic acid has a specific interaction with calcium deposits. It acts as a mild solvent. It can help break down calcium carbonate formations. This is not metaphor. This is chemistry. The same principle is why people use vinegar to remove calcium scale from pipes and shower heads. But the relevance to your arteries goes deeper than just calcium. Acetic acid has been shown to improve insulin sensitivity. Multiple studies, including a landmark trial at Arizona State University, demonstrated that consuming apple cider vinegar before a high-carbohydrate meal significantly reduced the post-meal blood sugar spike. In one study, participants with insulin resistance who consumed 2 tablespoons of apple cider vinegar before bed showed measurably lower fasting blood sugar levels by morning. When you reduce blood sugar spikes, you reduce the glycation of arterial walls. When you reduce glycation, you reduce the scaffolding on which calcification builds. When you reduce calcification, blood flows better. That's the chain. And apple cider vinegar interrupts it at 2 different points simultaneously. Lemon juice, the antioxidant shield one, full lemon, squeezed fresh. You're looking for roughly 2 to 3 tablespoons of juice. Lemon juice contributes 2 things to this formula. First, it provides a concentrated dose of vitamin C, and vitamin C is essential for the structural integrity of blood vessels. Collagen, the protein that makes up the walls of your arteries, requires vitamin C to be properly synthesized. Without adequate vitamin C, arterial walls become fragile and prone to micro-tearing. Those micro-tears are exactly where plaque formation begins. Second, lemon juice is rich in a class of plant compounds called flavonoids, particularly hesperidin and diosmin. These compounds have been shown to strengthen capillary walls, reduce vascular permeability, and improve venous tone. In plain language, they help the small vessels hold their shape and keep the blood moving in the right direction. There's also an interesting synergy between lemon juice and garlic. The citric acid in lemon helps preserve the allicin that was generated when you crush the garlic. Without this acidic environment, allicin begins to degrade fairly quickly. The lemon essentially extends the active lifespan of the most potent compound in the formula, raw honey, the anti-inflammatory carrier. 1 tablespoon of raw honey, not processed honey, raw, ideally local or Manuka grade. The difference matters because processing destroys the enzymes and polyphenols that give raw honey its therapeutic properties. Raw honey contains over 200 different bioactive compounds, including hydrogen peroxide-generating enzymes, flavonoids, phenolic acids, and methyl glyoxal in Manuka varieties. But for our purposes, the most relevant property of raw honey is its relationship with inflammation. Chronic inflammation is both a cause and a consequence of poor circulation. When arterial walls are inflamed, they swell inward, narrowing the lumen through which blood must pass. Raw honey has been clinically shown to reduce levels of C-reactive protein, one of the most reliable markers of systemic inflammation in the body. Raw honey also contains trace amounts of nitric oxide metabolites. Nitric oxide is the molecule that signals blood vessel walls to relax and dilate. It's the same mechanism targeted by many pharmaceutical vasodilators. Honey helps maintain and restore the body's natural nitric oxide signaling, and practically speaking, honey makes this tonic drinkable. The combination of raw garlic, apple cider vinegar, and lemon juice is intense. The honey tempers it without neutralizing the active compounds. Pink Himalayan salt, the mineral restorer. Just a pinch. This is the most modest ingredient, but it's not decorative. Pink Himalayan salt contains 84 trace minerals, including magnesium, potassium, and calcium, in their ionically balanced forms. This matters because magnesium is a natural calcium channel blocker. It competes with calcium at the cellular level and helps prevent excess calcium from entering arterial smooth muscle cells, which is one mechanism of arterial stiffening. Potassium, meanwhile, works in opposition to sodium to regulate blood pressure. When the sodium-potassium balance is correct, blood vessels maintain healthier tone. The pinch of Himalayan salt also helps with the bioavailability of the other compounds in the tonic. A small amount of sodium actually facilitates the absorption of glucose and amino acids in the gut, which paradoxically helps the body manage blood sugar more efficiently. The preparation: crush 4 raw garlic cloves. Wait 10 minutes. Add 2 tablespoons of raw apple cider vinegar. Add the juice of 1 lemon. Add 1 tablespoon of raw honey. Add a pinch of pink Himalayan salt. Stir until fully combined. The mixture will be pale gold with a slightly thick consistency. Do not heat it. Do not blend it for too long. The goal is to keep all the enzymes and active compounds alive. Prepare it fresh each morning. Some people make a batch for 2 or 3 days and refrigerate it, but fresh is always superior. Now let's talk about what actually happens inside your body when you start taking 2 tablespoons of this tonic every morning on an empty stomach. I'm going to take you through the timeline, hour by hour, day by day, week by week, because understanding what's happening biologically helps you stay consistent, and consistency is everything with this protocol. The first 30 minutes, activation. You take 2 tablespoons of the tonic, you're fasting, your stomach is empty. This is crucial, because without food competing for absorption, the active compounds go directly into your bloodstream much faster. Within the first 15 to 30 minutes, the allicin from the garlic begins entering your bloodstream through the walls of your small intestine. Allicin is a very small molecule. It moves quickly. Almost immediately, it begins signaling the endothelial cells that line your blood vessel walls. Endothelial cells are the gatekeepers of vascular health. When they're healthy, they produce nitric oxide in response to chemical signals, and that nitric oxide causes the smooth muscle wrapped around your arteries to relax. This is vasodilation. This is blood moving more freely. Within the same window, the acetic acid from the apple cider vinegar begins to modulate the activity of an enzyme called AMPK, adenosine monophosphate activated protein kinase. You don't need to remember that name, but you need to know what it does. It acts like a metabolic master switch. When AMPK is activated, your cells become more sensitive to insulin. They start taking up glucose more efficiently. Blood sugar begins to stabilize. At the same time, the citric acid from the lemon juice is adjusting the pH of your digestive environment, which improves the solubility and absorption of the honey's polyphenols. You won't feel any of this yet, but it's happening. In the first few days, most people notice something subtle, a warmth in the chest and stomach, shortly after taking the tonic. This is not discomfort, it's circulation. The blood moving with slightly less resistance through vessels that were chronically constricted. Some people notice that their appetite in the morning is more regulated. This is the blood sugar effect of the apple cider vinegar. The acetic acid slows the rate at which the stomach empties, which means carbohydrates from whatever you eat later are absorbed more gradually, producing a flatter blood sugar curve throughout the morning. If you've been experiencing tingling in your feet or hands, you may notice in these early days that it comes and goes differently, sometimes better, sometimes the same. This is normal. The body is beginning to recalibrate, but the arterial changes that produced those symptoms took years to develop. They won't reverse in 72 hours, but the process has started. Days 4 through 7, energy shifts. By the end of the first week, most people who are consistent with the morning protocol report the same experience. They have more energy in the first half of the day, not the jittery, artificial energy of caffeine or sugar, something different, something that feels more like their baseline energy from years ago. Here's what's causing it. When circulation to your muscles improves, even modestly, your muscles receive more oxygen per heartbeat. Oxygen is literally the fuel for mitochondrial energy production. Your cells' power plants run more efficiently when they're better supplied. The result is that physical tasks require less effort. The fatigue you'd accumulated, the kind that you'd started attributing to age, begins to lift. Men in particular often notice something else in this first week, a change in morning vitality. This is not coincidental. The arterial network that supplies the pelvic region is highly sensitive to the same factors that affect leg circulation. When blood flow improves to the extremities, it improves throughout the vascular network. The same mechanisms that were restricting circulation in your legs were restricting it elsewhere. The improvement in this area is often one of the most motivating things men experience in the first week of the protocol. It's a concrete signal that something real is changing. Weeks 2 and 3, tingling diminishes. This is the milestone that matters most to people with peripheral circulation problems. The tingling in the feet, the numbness that was there when you woke up, the pins and needles sensation after sitting for a while, the cold feet even under warm blankets, begins to reduce noticeably. What's happening physiologically is that the small peripheral arterioles, the tiny branches of the arterial tree that reach into the feet, the toes, the ankles, are responding to the cumulative vasodilatory effect of consistent allicin exposure. These small vessels are also the most sensitive to blood sugar-driven damage, and they're the most responsive to the anti-inflammatory compounds in the tonic. When blood finally reaches the peripheral tissues that had been chronically underperfused, those tissues wake up. Nerve endings that were being slowly compressed by swollen inflamed vessels start to decompress. The sensation of tingling, which is actually the sensation of nerve fibers that are partially hypoxic, partially starved of oxygen, begins to quiet down. Some people in this phase also notice that their legs feel less heavy in the evenings. That heaviness is classic venous insufficiency, a combination of poor arterial inflow and sluggish venous return. The lemon's flavonoids, particularly hesperidin and diosmin, are specifically active on the venous side of the circulation. They strengthen the valves in the leg veins that prevent blood from pooling. When those valves work better, blood moves up and out of the legs more efficiently. Weeks 3 and 4. Blood pressure and the bigger picture. By the end of the first month of consistent use, people often notice that their blood pressure readings are measurably different. The combination of allicin's vasodilatory effect, the potassium and magnesium from the Himalayan salt, and the blood sugar stabilizing effect of the apple cider vinegar creates a compound impact on cardiovascular pressure. Blood moves through more flexible, less calcified, less inflamed vessels. The heart doesn't have to push as hard. The numbers on the blood pressure cuff reflect that. Some people also begin to notice changes in their relationship with carbohydrates. The improved insulin sensitivity from consistent apple cider vinegar use means that the blood sugar spike after a meal is less dramatic. This starts a virtuous cycle. Less blood sugar spike means less glycation of arterial walls, which means slower accumulation of new calcification, which means better circulation preserved over time. You're not just treating the symptom, you're addressing the mechanism. Months 2 and 3, cumulative transformation. The changes that began in week 1 compound over time. Arteries that have been gradually relaxing and clearing begin to show real functional improvements. The body's own repair mechanisms, which depend heavily on adequate circulation to deliver the materials needed for healing, become more effective. Men who continue the protocol into the 2nd and 3rd month often report a consistent and sustainable increase in physical stamina. Tasks that were exhausting become manageable. Morning walks that used to leave them winded begin to feel comfortable. A significant reduction or elimination of the foot and leg symptoms that brought them to this protocol in the first place. An improvement in sleep quality, because circulation affects temperature regulation and nervous system balance, and both of those influence how deeply you sleep. And perhaps most importantly, a sense of having their body back. Not a dramatic transformation, not a miracle, but a genuine, measurable return toward the version of themselves they remember from a decade ago. An important note on consistency. 2 tablespoons every morning on an empty stomach. That's the protocol. Not 3 times a week when you remember, not in a smoothie diluted with other things, not skipped on weekends. Every morning. Fasting. Before coffee, before food, before anything else. The reason is pharmacokinetic. The compounds in this tonic work through cumulative exposure, not acute dosing. Allicin doesn't store in your tissues. It does its work and then clears your system. The acetic acid's effect on insulin sensitivity requires regular exposure to shift the baseline. These are not one-time interventions. They're daily inputs to an ongoing process. Think of it the way you think of watering a plant. One big watering session every 2 weeks doesn't sustain growth. A little water consistently every day does. I want to be honest with you about something. Everything I've described today, the tingling, the heavy legs, the fatigue, the changes in male vitality, the slow erosion of circulation, all of it is progressive. It gets worse over time if nothing changes. Poor circulation is not a cosmetic problem. It's not an inconvenience. It's the physical expression of arterial disease, and arterial disease, left unaddressed, follows a very predictable path. The same process that is causing tingling in your feet right now is the process that years from now becomes peripheral arterial disease, serious enough to require intervention. The same calcium deposits accumulating in the small arteries of your legs are accumulating in the arteries that supply your heart and brain. The same blood sugar-driven glycation that is stiffening the vessels in your extremities is stiffening the vessels everywhere. Doctors don't always connect these dots for their patients, not because they don't know they do, but because the visits are short. The conversation gets dominated by numbers and prescriptions, and the foundational message that circulation is the foundation of your entire health gets lost. Men are especially susceptible to missing this warning. Men tend to ignore symptoms until they're impossible to ignore. The tingling gets normalized. The fatigue gets attributed to getting older. The changes in vitality get accepted as inevitable. None of it is inevitable. All of it is addressable, but only if you start addressing it. And here's the mathematical reality of waiting. Every year that elevated blood sugar continues unchecked, the arterial wall becomes harder. Every year that calcification builds, the window for non-pharmaceutical reversal narrows. The 5-ingredient tonic we discussed today, it works because the body's arterial system is still responsive enough to change. There is a window. It's open right now, but it doesn't stay open indefinitely. The elders who developed this protocol understood something that modern medicine has sometimes obscured, that the body wants to heal, and that given the right inputs consistently, it will. The ingredients in this tonic are not exotic. They're in grocery stores. They cost less than a single copay, and they address the root mechanisms of vascular deterioration in a way that no single pharmaceutical does, because they work together, synergistically, at multiple points in the cascade, simultaneously. Go to your kitchen, or go to the store today. Get raw garlic, unfiltered apple cider vinegar, fresh lemons, raw honey, and pink Himalayan salt. Tomorrow morning, before you eat anything, before your coffee, take 2 tablespoons of this tonic. Do it again the next morning, and the next. For 30 days without interruption, keep a simple log. Note how your feet feel when you wake up. Note your energy by mid-morning. Note the heaviness in your legs by evening. Note your vitality. You don't need a doctor's appointment to measure these things. You already know your baseline. You'll know when it's changing. And if you want to go deeper, if you want to understand the other protocols that support healthy circulation, the foods that specifically accelerate arterial repair, the daily habits that compound with this tonic to produce results faster, then follow this channel. Because this tonic is one piece of a larger system, and we're going to walk through every piece. There are men watching this right now who have been told by their doctors that their circulation problems are simply part of aging, that their blood sugar issues are managed with medication, and that's all that can be done, that the way they feel right now is the way they're going to feel. I want those men specifically to know that's not the full story. The body is a system, and systems can be changed when you understand their inputs. You are not a passive passenger in your own aging process. You are the operator of a biological machine that responds to what you give it with extraordinary faithfulness. The elders knew this. That's why they passed down formulas instead of resignation. Now you know it too. Start tomorrow morning.